Hello everybody and welcome to week 7 of the NFL season. Today we're going to be doing a first look lineup where I go through each position and just give my initial thoughts on this slate. Last night I came so close to taking down the $1 million on the showdown slate. I had Joff Swaim as my $200 tight end instead of Tommy Sweeney, and I had the rest of the lineup like exactly how it was in this. So I'm a little salty about that, but we still had a good night in showdown. But now on to week 7. And again, this first look lineup I'm going to make is going to be more of like a double up, like cash game, more optimal lineup. I'll get into more tournament plays later this week. So starting at the top, we have Kyler Murray, who I do have interest in this week, going against the Texans. We just saw Carson Wentz have a great day. Everybody seems to have great days against the Texans. I don't think Kyler Murray is really pricey. It's $8,500 is up there for a quarterback. But, I mean, he's the lead candidate to be MVP this season, and I think he can just use these games to just help pad his stats even more. The next quarterback, we have Patrick Mahomes going against the Titans. Right off the bat, I'm pretty sure that this is going to probably be my favorite game of the week. When I first looked at the spreads of all these games, it seemed like there was going to be a lot of just mismatch, like blowouts. And this looks like the only one that could just be back and forth. So I'm going to have tons of Patrick Mahomes and probably a ton of Ryan Tannehill as well. We'll also get to Derrick Henry in a little bit. I do like Patrick Mahomes a lot. This Tennessee defense is terrible, and they just got banged up even more against the Bills last night. Don't have really interest in Tom Brady going against the Bears. I do like Aaron Rodgers against Washington. I normally won't ever play Aaron Rodgers, but because Washington's defense is so terrible and they're the worst against the pass, I think it's just so easy to stack. Like, you know exactly who to stack Rodgers with, and that's just Adams. So I do have some interest in Rodgers, but Lamar Jackson, only $100, who's cheaper than Rodgers, and we know Lamar runs the ball against Cincinnati. I was all over fading Lamar this past week. Everyone was playing him. I didn't know why against that Chargers pass defense, and we saw. They had 3 rushing touchdowns. Unfortunately, it got spread out, so not one of them went off, but I don't play quarterbacks against the Chargers. But the Bengals, a little bit weaker of a pass defense than the Chargers, and I think in this divisional game, this one could actually be closer. I think this one could be lower scoring, though. But I will have some interest in Lamar. Stafford against Detroit, there is a little bit of a revenge narrative there, but I think they just blow them out of the water. And even Stafford this past week, they blew the Giants. They scored 38 points. Stafford had like 4 touchdowns, but he still had like 26 or 27 fantasy points. He just doesn't have that mobility. It's hard. They took him out of the game. Especially in tournaments, you're going to want more upside. Jalen Hurts at 6,900 against the Raiders. I think I have to start. I mean, he's my favorite probably cash game play that I'm seeing right now. He's just too cheap. So like every single year we've had like this quarterback that goes late in the round. So like last year it was Josh Allen. He was drafted super late, and then he's like a mobile quarterback drafted late, ends up having an incredible year. The year before that it was Lamar Jackson. He actually went on to win MVP. Also drafted late. I think the year before that it was Patrick Mahomes. He was drafted late. He goes to win MVP. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is winning MVP. He's not. But his rushing upside for fantasy is ridiculous. Like against the Bucks, I think he had like 5 fantasy points in the fourth quarter, and then he ends up with 25. He just has such a high floor with his rushing ability. And if he does anything in the passing game, it's just going to make his score even better. So it's just really hard to not play Jalen Hurts at under 7K. Let's see here. We have Tannehill, who I'm going to have interest in tournaments. Like I said, I think that could be an absolute shootout. So far, like none of these other games seem like they'll be a shootout. Darnold against the Giants, no. Okay, Matt Ryan and Tua. I think this is the like sneaky game that could go under the radar, and I'm going to have probably exposure to each of these quarterbacks in tournaments, just because both these defenses are pretty weak. and you know who to stack these guys with. Tua you stack with Waddle and Gesicki. Matt Ryan you stack with Ridley, with Pitts. So it's just like the stacks are really easy there. And then slight interest in Justin Fields at 5,300. He did start running last week against the Packers, so they are getting him more involved there. And now he gets to face what is probably the worst secondary he's maybe faced all year in the Bucs. His pass catchers, Robinson and Mooney, are going to be super cheap this week, as especially Robinson, who hasn't done much at all this year. But again, I love the talent of Robinson, and I think there's no way he doesn't have some good games this year. And this is like a prime breakout spot against this Bucs secondary. They should be playing from behind a lot, meaning more targets. So I do like Justin Fields a little bit, but yeah, it seems Jalen Hurts is probably the optimal play here for quarterback. Okay, going to running back. This man, Derrick Henry. He's not from this planet. This dude is like a machine out there. There is no way someone like him, who since high school has had like 50 carries a game, he had his high school stats were out of this world. He had like 200 touchdowns and like over 12,000 yards. I mean, this man is a freak of nature. He got like 30 plus carries at Alabama, and now he's in the NFL getting 30 plus carries a game and just running. He's making these NFL teams look like he's in high school again. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I feel like by putting Derrick Henry in your lineup, like you're getting like a superhuman in your lineup, like compared to these other guys. Like look, Fournette, Patterson, Josh Jacobs, Saquon's out, McCaffrey's out. Like, I don't know how at this point you just don't somehow try to fit him in your lineup until he's over 10,000. This dude is setting just records right now. He's going against Kansas City, who has a weak rush defense, and this should be a shootout. Like I'm in previous years, I've always tried to fade Derrick Henry when I could, and then I just watch him just break these 80-yard runs like every single game, and it can always have, like, it'll be like 3 quarters in and you're like, wow, I faded Derrick Henry. It's looking great. He has like 14 fantasy points. He has like 80 yards and a rushing touchdown. And then he breaks off an 80-yard touchdown and boom, he's in all these optimal lineups. That's happened so many times to me, and I just don't want to be on the other side of that anymore. So, I don't know. I think in cash games, you just have to play Henry, especially with so many studs injured or just on bye this week, like Dalvin Cook's on bye. Kamara's not on the main slate. You are having an alien on your team when you play him. And good luck, whatever lineup you create that doesn't have Derrick Henry. Okay, sorry, I spoke for like 10 minutes on Derrick Henry, but I think it had to be said. Aaron Jones against Washington, slight interest. They have a better defensive front, weaker secondary, so I like Adams more than Jones this week, but I'll have a little exposure. Henderson against Detroit. I think the Rams win this game handedly. So if I'm not going to play much Stafford, I do want to have quite a bit of Henderson this week. He's pretty much just the Rams bell cow at this point. You're getting a bell cow in one of the best offenses in the NFL at only 6,600. So I'm going to have tons of interest, just as I did last week. Chuba Hubbard, I will have some interest in against the Giants. He's pretty much has the McCaffrey rule. Obviously, he's just not as good, but he gets most of the snaps. He gets if you look through his game log here, like 16 attempts, 24 attempts, 3 targets, 6 targets. Like, he gets plenty of volume, and going against a weak Giants defense, I do like Hubbard quite a bit this week. Darrell Williams, I played last week. I said he was so cheap. He's the main back in the number 1 offense in the league, and that is the Chiefs. And he was under 5K last week. I played a ton of him. He had a great game. Now he gets to go against Tennessee, also a bad defense. And I think because he does catch balls too. You know, he has 4 targets, 5 targets. He had 21 rushing attempts. Like, at 5,800, I still have tons of interest as the main back in the Chiefs offense. So I think even when I have Mahomes on the team, I will still include Williams in there, as he could catch a passing touchdown. And the lineups that I don't have Mahomes, I'll really want to use them just to get leverage off of the Mahomes teams. Going down here, I don't really like anybody. I might go back to the well with Mike Davis a little bit. Everyone looks at Mike Davis like, oh, Cordero Patterson just took over this role. Like Mike Davis is an afterthought. But then you just look like Mike Davis is still playing just as many or more snaps than Patterson. He's getting about 13 rushing attempts and still 5, 2, 4, like averaging 4 targets a game. He's super cheap, going against a weak Miami rush defense. I have some interest in Mike Davis. I'm going to get burned by him again. Patterson will probably have another 4 touchdowns, and I'll hate myself, but I don't know. I think at 5,200, it's going to be hard to get away from him this week. And then, Miles Sanders at 5,100. That just seems weird. I don't know. Against the Raiders, I know they haven't been running the ball as much, but I mean, he still gets some targets, and he's still, like, when they're around the goal line, he's the main dude. I'm gonna like these cheaper too, especially like playing Henry, and I'm sure I'm gonna want to get Adams in here. For cash games, I like Davis and I like Sanders, but I'll go Sanders just because he's a little cheaper and he's basically the main back. I know Kenneth Gainwell gets some passing work, but I don't know. I like Sanders a lot this week. Let's go to defense because we always just throw in just the cheap one, the best cheap one we find. I don't like these. I guess the Giants at home against Carolina we can throw in there. And then usually we try to pay down at tight end if we can, but usually it's pretty ugly. Ricky Seals-Jones still only 3,700. Washington team is so banged up. I don't know, he's 6'9" targets. He's probably the cash game play still. Yeah, we'll throw Ricky Seals in there for now and see. So that leaves us 5,600. So we're gonna have to probably get a cheap receiver in here. Let's see. Where's Rashad Bateman? Because he played quite a bit, and there he is, 3,400. His first game back, he tied Mark Andrews in targets, and it's obvious they like this guy a lot, and they want to use him a ton. So at only 3,400, you need 8 or 9 points out of him in a cash game to pay that off. And we probably need some salary savings because I'm going to want to get Adams. He's under 9,000 again. Devontae Adams going against this Washington secondary. I mean, this just could be one of his 8 for 150 and 2 type of games. Out of any team in the league, this is the team to do it against. Washington is so bad in their secondary. And we just saw Tyreek Hill, is dealing with an injury right now. And he still had 12 targets. I think he maybe had 80 or 90 yards. But again, he didn't play the full allotment of snaps, and he's battling an injury. Adams, oh man, this could just be an explosion game for Adams. I still like Tyreek a ton. I still want to learn more about this injury that he was dealing with. But I'm gonna, if I have a Mahomes team, of course I'm gonna try to play Tyreek over Adams. But if I can, I'll try to fit them both in. So what do we have? That leaves us 5,100. We need to probably get, honestly, I'm going to put probably Mike Davis in the flex. And that leaves us 5,100 left. Oh man, Allen Robinson at 5,100, but it's just hard to play him with the volume he's been getting. In tournaments, I'm going to play a ton of Allen Robinson. But for cash games, T. Higgins is probably the best move. He just sees 6+ targets a game. He's the most consistent receiver in this price range. So that's kind of a first look lineup. I'm still gonna go through these other positions and just give my thoughts on some of my favorite plays. So Cooper Kupp going against Detroit, I think he's gonna be extremely popular, and now being at the same price range as way more than Hopkins and these guys, but just right under Tyreek and Adams, I still think he's going to command a ton of ownership because of what he's been doing this year. He's the only receiver in the league that's gotten 10+ targets a game. I mean, he's going crazy. I could see Henderson just having a bigger game here. I love Cooper Kupp. I have him in all of my season-long leagues. I was super high on him coming into this year, but you just got to pick your spots week to week in daily fantasy. So I think this is a spot to go away from Kupp and play more of Adams, Tyreek, even Hopkins, who now like he has a little revenge game narrative going against Houston. In my Kyler teams, I'm going to stack him with Hopkins. What do we got? We have DJ Moore, DJ Moore is such a stud. I'm going to have plenty of him. Like look at his targets. He's right up there with like Cooper Kupp going against this weak Giants team. McLaurin in my Green Bay stacks that I make with Rodgers and Adams, I'll probably run that back with McLaurin. Ridley, he's now at 6,600. Wow, that again. So like, it all kind of depends. Like in my tournaments, like what quarterback I'm playing in that lineup. So like all of my Matt Ryan teams gonna have Ridley in it. Okay, AJ Brown at 6,300 going against the Chiefs. He's gonna probably be one of my favorite plays of the week in tournaments. That is just too cheap. Honestly, I might have to somehow figure how to get him in a cash game, because that is incredibly cheap for him. Julio could be out because he just left with a hamstring injury. So if he's the only dude out there, it's going to be just the AJ Brown and Derrick Henry show. Like, he had like 0 targets in the first half against the Bills, and then he gets 10 targets in the second half and almost has 100 yards. Again, and he still had like Tre'Davious White on him. I'm going to be playing a ton of AJ Brown this week. He's one of the most talented receivers in the entire league. Brandon Cooks, for his volume, I like it, his price tag. In my Kyler stacks, I'll be running it back with Cooks on the other side. Godwin is he's the cheapest Tampa Bay receiver. I still think he's the best Tampa Bay receiver, and the Bears are the weakest at defending like the slot, which is where Godwin plays most of the snaps. So the only player I'm going to play on the Bucs is going to be Chris Godwin this week. That's too cheap for him. We already talked about Higgins. Robbie Anderson, this dude had 11 targets and he had 11 yards. That is very impressive to do. But he is seeing that obviously that's a good sign that it's not a good sign that he had 11 yards, but he had 11 targets, which is a good sign. That's now 29. He's averaging 10 targets in his last 3 games. And for a player like Robbie Anderson, who usually has a higher depth of target, that's a good sign for him. So I will like Robbie Anderson. He's going to be like a really good Millie Maker play. Someone that can, Millie Maker plays, they can score like 2 points, but Robbie Anderson can score over 30. Mooney, I have in some of my Field stacks, I'll have Mooney. That's pretty cheap. He seems to be Fields' favorite target right now. I don't know why it's not Robinson. Mooney's great, but Robinson needs to get more involved. Hardman, I'll have some. Like if I don't play Tyreek, maybe I'll play Hardman instead in my Mahomes stacks. But that's pretty much it, I think. I already kind of went through the lineup earlier in this video for like an initial first look. Tomorrow we'll be going over the Thursday night football game between the Broncos and Browns. That's going to be probably the ugliest one of the year. But please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. And I will see you tomorrow for the breakdown of the Showdown slate. See ya.